Welcome to the Onshape tutorial for drawing or modelling a basic pizza cutter. I'm assuming that you've already logged onto the software, so you've created your account and you've perhaps had a little play or a little look at it. This will take you through the very basics, but it's worth having a look at the other videos that we've got on setting up an account or talking to your teacher about it before you make a start on this. So once you've logged into your Onshape account, here you can see all of the stuff that I've been playing around with beforehand. What we're going to do is create a folder to put our pizza cutters in. So I'm going to go create and folder. I'm just going to call this pizza cutters. I'm going to create that and you'll see that the folder appears here. If I go into there, it's empty because I haven't got any folders, any files or folders in there. So I'm now going to go create document and I'm going to call this basic pizza cutter, because that's what we're going to do is create a basic pizza cutter model. Click OK, and that will take me into the modeling screen. So here we have 3 work planes already set up, the front, the right and the top. These are, if you like, bits of paper that we can draw sketches on. We've got our tree over here, which is where all of our features and sketches will appear so that we can go back and edit those. And across the top we've got our different tools that we can use for sketching and applying features. These are context sensitive, so these will change depending on what we're doing on the screen. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sketch out the handle profile of our pizza cutter. So I'm going to right click on the front plane, left click on new sketch, and then I'm going to right click again in space and I'm going to go view normal to sketch plane. So this now means the front plane is nice and flat viewing straight onto us. So I can draw on it as if I was looking down on a piece of paper. I'm going to use the center rectangle tool. So up here I've got the rectangle, corner rectangle tool. If I click on the little arrow with the left mouse button, I can then with the left mouse button select the center point rectangle. I'm going to start drawing from the origin. The origin is where the 3 work planes overlap. And it means that I know that the other work planes will be running through the middle of this. So I'm just going to drag out a center rectangle, and then I'm going to use the dimension tool to dimension this. So I'm going to click on the top line, and I'm not going to click in the middle because it will then dimension it to the edge of that work plane. So I'm just going to click over to the left. I'm going to change that to 10 and hit enter. And I'm going to do the same on one of the vertical lines. I'll pick the right vertical line. Again, don't click on the edge of the work plane. I'm going to change that to 20. And there I have a center rectangle that I've dimensioned. If I hold the right mouse button down, I can just spin that around slightly and see it in 3-dimensional space. So you can see it's just, at the moment, an infinitely thin rectangle drawn on that front work plane. So I'm now going to click on a feature. I'm going to click on the extrude feature, and you'll see that it's gone to the default setting, so it's coming out towards me and 25 millimeters. I want that to go in the opposite direction, so I'm going to click on the arrow to change the direction, and I want that to be 105 millimeters long. Now, hopefully when you've set up Onshape, you've set it up to be working in millimeters. If you haven't and you've gone into inches, that's okay. As long as you use the same units for this, it won't matter as long as you sort of stick to those throughout the whole thing. Okay, now that's a bit blocky as a handle, so let's round off these corners. So I'm going to use the fillet tool. So in engineering and product design, a fillet is a radius. It's already defaulted to 5 millimeters. So I'm just going to click on the 4 long edges, so I can see those 3 quite easily. And the other one, if I hold the right mouse button down, I can maneuver it to select the 4th one. So that's a much more comfortable looking shape. So I'm just going to click on the tick to say that I'm happy with that. The next thing I'm going to draw or model is the hook that goes at the back. And again, I'm going to draw this on the right work plane. So I've gone from the front work plane to get the shape. This I'm now going to draw on the right work plane. So right click on the right work plane, select new sketch, and then right click in the space and view normal to sketch plane. So that's over here. If I zoom in a bit with the mouse wheel, I can manipulate it so I can see where I'm drawing. So I'm going to start off this with a corner rectangle. I'm going to change over to a corner rectangle. And I'm actually going to come in a little bit and down a little bit to start this off. And I'm going to draw a rectangle just like this. Now, I'm going to dimension it, but before I dimension it, I want this line to actually line up with the back edge here. So I'm going to use the coincident tool. So I click on the coincident tool. I'm going to click on that vertical line. And then I'm going to click on here. Now, it doesn't matter where on here. These all line up. So I'll click on the middle one. And you can see it's moved the rectangle over. So it's lined up with that edge now. It's perfectly lined up to a fraction of a millimeter. I'm now going to use the dimension tool to dimension. So I want a length of 20 millimeters. So type in 20, hit enter. And I want a height of 15, hit enter. And I want the distance from that line to the top up there to be 2.5. So there's the, if you like, the outline of our shape. You can almost imagine this as being sort of a bit of metal, but we need to punch a hole in it. So we're now going to use the offset tool. So I'm going to select the offset tool, and then I'm going to select the lines that I want to offset to. So I want this offset to the top line. And you see the arrows pointing downwards, so it's come inside, which is what I want. If it's gone up there, I just drag that arrow down. I want that line, and I want that line. I'm not worried about this line. Now I can also drag the arrow to change the size. And I want 2.5 millimeters, so there we go. I can drag the arrow to change that to 2.5, or I could just click onto the dimension, double click the dimension to set it, and I could type in the dimension. So that's what I want. I'm happy with that. Those are the right sizes, but I don't want this line in here. So I'm going to use the trim tool, and I'm just going to trim that line out there. Okay, and it's come up to confirm the 2.5 on there, so I just hit enter. Now it's really important that when you're sketching in Onshape, or if you're using SolidWorks, that when you've got a sketch, any point on your sketch only has two lines coming away from it. So this corner, I have a line going down here, and a vertical line here. If I hadn't trimmed that bit off, if I'd taken this point here, I would have had a vertical line going up, a horizontal line going to the right, and a vertical line going down. So I had to get rid of that to make this an appropriate sketch. Now I've got that enclosed shape, I can apply a feature to it. So I'm going over to my extrude tool, and again, if I use the right mouse button, you can see that that's shot off all the way over there. I only want this to be 2.5. So I'm going to change that to 2.5. And if I press tab, it'll update. But I want it to be symmetrical. So if we look down on that, you can see it's off to one side. So I'm going to change this blind constraint by clicking on the arrow to symmetrical, and you can see it shifts over. I'm now happy with that. So I'm going to click on the tick to say it's OK. And I can sort of zoom around and manipulate that. OK. Now time to do the guard. So again, that's going to be on the right plane. So right click, use sketch, and I'm going to right click and view normal to the sketch plane. And again, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to use the line tool for this. And because I'm at the origin is here, it will automatically pick up the origin. So I'm just going to come up part way, and then I'm going to draw a line out at an angle, and I'm now going to dimension these. So let's use the dimension tool. That line there wants to be 10 millimeters, so I'm just going to change that to 10. And this line here wants to be 20, and it wants to be 20 along the length. And then I want to change this angle, or make sure this angle is correct. So I'm going to select that line, and that allows me to dimension the angle between the two. And I want that to be 150, so I type that in and hit enter. So again, I'm going to use the offset tool. So here's the offset tool. Select the offset tool. Select the two lines that I want. So those are the two lines. I want this to be this way this time, and I'm going to click on the dimension and change that to 2. Hit enter, and I've got that drawn in. And now, because I need this to be a solid shape, I need to close the ends. So I'm going to go back to the line tool. I'm going to pick up the end of that line, pick up the end of that line, let go, and do the same here. So So I now have an enclosed shape. You can see it shaded it in to show that it's an enclosed shape. I now want to extrude that, so I'm just going to use the right mouse button held down to spin it around a bit. Go to the extrude shape, and I want this to be 10 millimeters. Press tab to update it, and again I want this to be symmetrical. Once I'm happy, click on the tick. So I've drawn half the guard. I'm now going to mirror this so that I've got the full guard in place. So I'm going to use the mirror tool. So I'm going to go to mirror, and you see it's a part mirror to start with. I don't want to mirror the whole part. I want to mirror the feature that I've just done. So I'm now going to select the feature, and I now need to select the mirror plane. So I click on that to select it, and then I'm going to click on the bottom. So it's mirrored around that face, and it's drawn it in, and therefore I am happy. So I've got the guard in place. Okay, so just zoom out. Again, right click on the right plane, new sketch, right click, new normal to sketch. So now I'm going to draw the arm that comes out that the blade is attached to. And I'm going to start off with a circle. So I've created my sketch, and I'm just going to hover over the origin, and I'm going to come out here, and you can hopefully see a sort of dotted orange line, and I'm just going to click and drag out a circle. I'm now going to use the dimension tool, and I'm going to dimension from the origin to the center of the circle, and that wants to be 42 millimeters. And I'm also going to dimension the diameter of the circle. I want that to be 10 millimeters. I'm now going to draw the rest of the arm in. So I'm going to use a line tool. I'll just zoom in a little bit with the mouse wheel. And I'm going to draw a line up and along. And then from that corner I'm going to go to the circle. Now I can either pick up the top of the circle at that coincident point, or if I move it along, you can see like a little tangent symbol appears. Let's use that because it will give a slightly smoother transition. So I've drawn the profile in. Now I want this line to line up with that edge. So again, I'm going to go over here and use the coincidence tool. I'm going to pick that line and that edge. So I know that that is lined up with that. I'm now going to dimension those lines. So I'm going to use the dimension tool. I want that to be 7 millimeters. And I want this line to be 20 millimeters. And that automatically creates the angle that I want and the join that I want with the circle. But I want that to be down the bottom as well, so I'm going to mirror that. So I'm now going to use the mirror tool. And because I'm in a sketch, it wants me to select a mirror line, and I can pick the edge of that work plane, the top work plane. So that's going to be the mirror, and the lines I want to mirror are this one, and I need to remember to put the vertical one in there as well. And you can see that it's shaded that in. The last thing I want to do is just delete that bit of the circle, so I don't have more than 2 lines coming away from that point. I've got 1, 2, 3 at the moment. I'm just going to click on that semicircle, and I now have the blade. So again, right mouse button, hold it down just to spin it round, and I'm going to extrude this shape now. This only wants to be 2 millimeters, so type in 2, press tab, but I want it to go in the other direction. I want it to be offset so that the blade is almost running down the middle of the pizza tool. So I'm going to change the direction so it goes that way, and click OK. I'm now going to add in the blade. So the blade, we're going to draw on the top plane. So I'm going to right click on the top plane, click new sketch, right click, and view normal to sketch. And I'm going to use a corner rectangle, and I am, this time, I don't need to necessarily put a coincidence on here. You can see that it wants to line up with the origin. So I'm just going to come down here and drag out a corner rectangle. It's big and chunky at the moment, but I'm going to dimension that so that it changes. So let's use the dimension tool. From the origin, or from the line that's in line with the origin, it doesn't matter, to the edge of the blade wants to be 42 millimeters, so that would be the center of our circle down here. I want the blade to be 1 millimeter thick, and I want it to be 33 millimeters long. Well, it's actually going to have a diameter of 66, so we're going to sweep that round. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit so that I can see that edge, and I'm now going to revolve. I'm going to click on the revolve axis, and I'm going to click on that line, click tick, and if I move that around, you can see that we now have a blade on there. The last thing to add in is going to be a rivet in the middle, and again we're going to draw that on the top plane. So right click on the top plane, new sketch, right click, view normal, and I'm going to draw a circle to start off with. So I'm just going to zoom in. I'm going to pick up, hopefully you can see the dotted line there lining up with the origin. So I'm just going to draw a circle. I'm going to zoom out slightly so I can see the origin again, and I'm going to dimension it. So it's already lined up on this line here. From the origin, or the line by the origin, to the centre of the circle, I want to be 42 again, and I want the diameter of the circle to be 5 millimeters. And once I've drawn that, I'm just going to put a line in that goes across the middle of the circle. So if I start in the centre, go to the left, highlight there, so that's now split the circle in two halves. I can use the trim tool to get rid of one half, and now I'm going to use the revolve tool, pick the axis, pick that line, and that's spun that around to make a sphere. But if I zoom out, you can see that it's made it look like a rivet with two different size heads on there. I can come over to here, and I can go to isometric, and that is my finished basic pizza cutter. So hopefully you followed that through okay. In the next video we'll look at how we can modify this to make it look a little bit more realistic, to add a few extra features to it. Thank you for watching.